All right now, are y'all ready for this? This is Tanya Talks. So let's talk about it. Okay, so many things are going through my mind right now. I was on Twitter and I typed in Meghan Markle. I'm like, what are they saying about her now? And I see this whole discourse about this woman, Marjorie Wallace, who runs a mental health charity in the United Kingdom. And she's asked a question. This woman is being interviewed on a podcast. So, Marjorie Wallace, she is the head of a mental health charity called SANE, SANE. And she is also the author of the book, The Silent Twins. So Marjorie Wallace is being interviewed by Rachel Johnson on her podcast called Difficult Woman. And on this podcast, Rachel Johnson is asking Marjorie Wallace questions about the charity. She's asking about how difficult was it to get the charity running, and she talks a little bit about that, and I'm going to let you hear in her own words.
I would never advise anyone to do anything like I did. I mean, if anyone says, I'd like to found a charity, I just say don't. I just don't. But then I was still full of this sort of belief that somehow if you worked hard enough, if you strove hard enough, everything would get better for people. Somehow you could improve people's lives. Somehow you would take away the pain. You know, with mental illness, mental pain, you don't have morphine. You have no way really of dealing it except often telling your story, believing your story. You are part of your own drama, and I would write up people's stories, and that would somehow be cathartic in some way. So I just had this sort of rather silly belief that somehow if you went around and raised money and you set up research, which I believe in tremendously on the mind and brain, and you had a helpline which we set up where we're listening to people's stories, non-judgmentally, just listening to the stories like I did as a reporter, and then helping people through their own story. I thought somehow things would get better, and I did get an enormous amount of help from our King Charles, and I have to say that he was so supportive, so empathetic.
To what extent do you think you are an emergency service and you pick up where the state has failed people? I mean, how many people have you helped who haven't had access to any, state psychiatric beds, or haven't been able to see anybody, haven't been able to get any talking therapies? How much has SANE done in its existence? Could you sum up?
Well, obviously, and again, this is possibly one of my faults or difficulties. Nothing is enough. For everyone we've helped, there are thousands that haven't been helped, and one's aware of that. But I think, our helpline has helped thousands and thousands of people, because, we know that because I get the feedback from some people, and we get feedback from some people. I know that some people that
Is it staffed 24/7?
No, we can't afford that. But it's you can leave a message any time,
okay.
And we've got a team of people that will ring back. You can also we have a crisis line open between 4 and 10, so people can get in touch with us. But I think, and I hope, and I think I know, because I've heard people tell me later and other things that they put in. It's not just me, remember. We've got amazing volunteers that give up their time and come in on a wet night and a weekend. We're open at Christmas and so on. I mean, and I've got a staff. I mean, I think and hope we've helped people, because what we do is we call people back. We don't believe that everything's just a crisis and then detach ourselves. We call people back. We try and help them over dark times in their life until they get some other help. So because I've always sort of thought, and I've had a lot of dark times, I think you just need a consistency. You need someone that you can trust,
Sure,
who knows your story. And that's what we try and do at SANE.
So you've heard in her own words what she said about the charity. and then what she has said about mental health. So in light of everything that Marjorie is sharing about mental health, which up until that point in the podcast is positive, it's affirming, it's what you want to hear, someone who is an advocate and a champion of good mental health and of people getting the mental health that they need. She actually says that she's a stopgap. She's someone that people can go to when they cannot go to the national health in the United Kingdom. So her charity really champions mental health. They are there to help people who are in crisis. And so Rachel Johnson then turns the eye of Sauron, so to speak, on Meghan Markle, because Meghan Markle has just spoken about her suicidal ideation in a documentary that was dropped on Netflix. Rachel Johnson is asking Marjorie Wallace specifically about what Meghan Markle said during her documentary, specifically what she mentioned about her own suicidal ideation. Now, you would think that Marjorie Wallace, this champion of mental health, who has a charity called SANE, who helps people in crisis, mental health crisis in the United Kingdom, you would think that she would have some affirming things to say. You would think that as a mental health advocate who runs a charity for mental health people, for people who are going through crisis, that she would have something to say in the lines of what people such as Meghan Markle, who are dealing with suicidal ideation, what they should do. I want you to listen to what she said in her own words.
Can I ask, I mean, we're all processing, to use a Vogue phrase, the Netflix series on Meghan and Harry, in which Meghan talks about suicide and her suicidal ideation. Do you think that was advisable?
I don't like to condemn anyone. I mean, I tell you what I don't really like, and this is nothing to do with the Netflix series, is that I don't like victimhood, and I've never played it myself in my life. I mean, at least I hope I've never played it. I mean, yes, you can have I have had terrible, terrible times, and with the children, with my life, with my divorce, with all kinds of terrible things. But I don't really think that playing the victim card helps, whatever you're a victim of. And I don't really always respect people who take victimhood as a career. I think that's not my sort of stoic philosophy. I think you've got to find ways of living with whatever disability, disadvantage you have, and everyone has it, whether they're privileged or whether they're poor.
Are you as shocked as I am? Are you as shocked as I am? Because I cannot believe the words that just came out of Marjorie Wallace's mouth. Did she just say that Meghan Markle was playing the victim card? That she doesn't believe in victimhood? I want to share what I read on Twitter because this is powerful. This is by, and the name is Reese's Pieces. She says, the founder, in reference to Marjorie Wallace, she says, the founder has proactively othered the millions of people living with mental health issues, problems, and disorders. She trivialized suicide prevention and labeled seeking help as nothing more than playing the victim. It's dangerous, disgusting, and truly damaging language. And I agree with that. I'm going to say it again. Read it one more time. She said, the founder has proactively othered the millions of people living with mental health issues, problems, and disorders. She trivialized suicide prevention and labeled seeking help as nothing more than playing the victim. It's dangerous, disgusting, and truly damaging language. Immediately, when I read that tweet, it reminded me of the millions upon millions of women throughout history who have lived with a spouse that has beat them beyond recognition. Some of these men have murdered their spouses. Some have just beat them their entire marriage all the way up until the time that they died. Their entire marriage they dealt with. And some of these women suffered in silence. Every woman in society, or just about every woman in society, was being beaten. You see this in certain parts of the world today. There are some nations in Africa and in Asia where it is okay to beat your spouse. That is the rule of the land. And so in many instances throughout history, and even to this day, women have gone to their pastors, they have gone to the police, they have gone to various people in authority for help. And many of these women have been told, have been asked, they have been further victimized. What are you doing to provoke your husband? Stop doing those things and he won't hit you. They've trivialized them. They made them to be the problem. You're the reason why you're being victimized. Instead of pointing to the person that's abusing them, the abuser, they're pointing a finger at the victim and saying, you're the reason why, you're the problem. And that's what Marjorie Wallace just did to Meghan Markle. She just spent this entire time talking so romantically about her charity and the work that her charity does. And then she also goes on to wax about her own problems. And you can listen to the rest of that podcast. I'm not going to put the rest of her issues up there. Listen to the podcast and you'll hear in the podcast what she has said about her own life. But she trivialized Meghan Markle because Meghan Markle talking about her own suicidal ideation. She's playing a victim. She just threw her victim card out there. She is taking on victimhood. She's trivialized her. And people, every time someone famous, well-known, whether they're an actor, an actress, a model, a broadcaster, an athlete, a politician, a politician's child, an actor's child, a kid in school, every time these individuals commit suicide and complete suicide, some who commit and don't complete suicide and they survive, but those who complete suicide, every single time you see all over Twitter, all over social media, all on the news, why didn't they come and seek help? Why didn't they ask for help? Why didn't they tell anybody? Just call the National Suicide Line, which is now 988. Just call that number and you'll get help. Call them. Talk to me. I'll help you. You don't have to be alone. You're not alone. Don't take your life. Every single time these people, you hear it all over the place. You want to know why these people don't seek help? These people are in crisis. They are enduring extreme trauma. They did not come to this conclusion of taking their own life lightly. Majority of people want to live. Unless you are in excruciating pain day in and day out. And I'm not talking about palliative care and euthanasia. That's a whole different topic. But people who come to the conclusion that death is a better option of living, they don't come at that lightly. They didn't wake up one day and say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try death today. They didn't come at that lightly. There were some extreme things going on in their life before they came to that conclusion. They were victims of extreme racism, as in Meghan Markle's case. They are victims of sexual abuse, physical abuse, bullying, these campaigns of hate on social media, There's a variety of reasons why people come to this conclusion that they'd rather take their life. They're in extreme pain, as was Robin Williams. He was in extreme pain and he made that decision. There's a variety of reasons why people decide that suicide is the best option. These individuals who do not complete suicide, either they were just at the point where it's suicidal ideation, they've only talked about it, and they mention it to a loved one or to a close confidant, to a friend, to a healthcare professional, to anyone else that they respect or admire, or they think they can step in and help them. They haven't actually carried it out. They haven't done anything. That person is not playing the victim card. That person is actually telling you about their trauma, and they're in crisis and they need help. Even if someone did not tell anybody about their suicidal ideation, made a plan, carried out the plan, and did not complete suicide, and then they bravely spoke out about their suicide attempt, such as Tamar Braxton. She's not playing the victim card. She is talking about the events of her life that brought her to that critical moment where she was in crisis, and she made a decision that she would rather not be here and continue living in the pain that she was in, and would rather leave the planet. I tweet up when mental health stuff comes up and suicide comes up on the timeline when I'm on Twitter. I tweet about it. I say a few things here and there, and then I just go mum. I don't say much because there's a lot more that I could say. And there's a lot more I could say in this particular video that I'm doing and placing on YouTube, this podcast that I'm throwing out there. There's a lot more I could say. And eventually I will say in the future. I'm working on a project and I will say something more in the future. But right now, I could not just not say anything because something needs to be said. Something needs to be said. It is not okay what she said, and it's more reprehensible what she said, what Marjorie Wallace said, because of her role, her position. This woman is not young. She's not 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, just starting life and don't quite know where she is. This is an 80-year-old woman. This is a senior woman. She has lived life. She knows better. And then she's in the mental health field. So she knows more than many others do because that's her field. That's what she breathes in and day out. She knows better. But her bias, her extreme bias came out. And it makes me wonder who is actually getting help through this charity SANE that she's in charge of. Are they only helping certain individuals and not helping others? Because she has totally othered Meghan Markle. Meghan Markle's pain is not the same as everybody else's. Meghan Markle is playing the victim. You can't pay attention to what she's saying. She's playing a victim card. She's taking on the mantle of victimhood. So you can just erase what she said, erase what she's experienced. It's not important. She's othered her. And it's not right. It is not right what she said. And we should not allow people, especially people like Marjorie Wallace. We should not allow them not just to get away with them. We should not allow them to say what they're saying and continue in the role that they're in. As a society, we should say it is not okay and hold these people up to a higher standard. And this is not a partisan thing. This is not a conservative versus liberal thing. This is not a pro-monarchy versus not pro-monarchy thing. This is not a pro-Meghan Markle versus I'm not into Meghan Markle thing. This is pro-humanity. You cannot say that you support mental health and then say that someone who is enduring an extreme crisis, suicidal ideation is extreme, and say that that person is playing the victim, that they're using a victim card. It's reprehensible.